Legends of Runeterra is the new League of Legends spin-off card game that will be released on mobile, PC and consoles sometime in 2020. We caught up with the design director on Legends of Runeterra, Andrew Yip, and asked his opinion on what goes on into designing a digital card game, managing player accessibility, and 80s cartoon characters. In your opinion, what sets Legends of Runeterra apart from other card games in the market right now?
Obviously, League IP, first and foremost. We, patterned a lot of our game based on our expectations of what players League of Legends and fans of League of Legends would expect. So that's why our game is also very champion forward. But IP aside, when we compare it to other games, like actually kind of what you mentioned about the sort of intuitive flow and that back and forth like interaction is something that we experience a lot playing paper card games, but we felt like digitally, a lot of the digital games hadn't really made that translation successfully, at least in a way that, played well on both PC and on mobile platforms. People who have played other Riot games are also, I think, really used to and expect, a continual level of support and in particular like live balance and basically just like have the game run as a really high quality service. And that's something that we, want to carry over to Legends of Runeterra as well.
Other than the little critters and boards we see on screen, can you share with us what other cosmetics we can see in the future?
So currently we have the critters and the boards as our cosmetics, and obviously those are pretty exciting marquee things. But we have a lot in the pipeline that my cosmetics lead will kill me if I talk about and spoil too much. We're definitely exploring things like additional emotes. We've been delighted by how much players have found kind of like different ways to interpret and use the emotes. I think the Braum the Braum wave is probably the one that creates the most angst right now, which not what we would have guessed. So emotes, card backs. We hope that players get really excited and connect with individual cards. So, card upgrades and different ways to realize card fantasies. Those are all things that we're exploring, but we don't want to, get into particular commitments until we know for sure that it's or just around the corner.
Will the game be friendly to newbies? Would you say the learning curve for the game is quite high?
Our goal and our vision was really to make a game that had deep gameplay kind of without compromise. The ways in which we think about making the game accessible actually have less to do with making the core game easy to understand. Of course, that is valuable if we can make it true. But the way that we think we can make the game accessible is by putting it on all the platforms that players want to play it, by making acquiring the cards generous and accessible, and then finally by just doing better onboarding in-game to make sure that players are, have those training opportunities and learning opportunities and can encounter them at their own pace and in a way that feels fun.
How creative would you say players can get when building a deck like yourself? How creative do you expect your players to be?
Making sure that players had the opportunity to basically show us how creative they were was really one of the key values when we made the game. That's why we have the rule that allows players to mix and match cards from different regions and pick kind of their favorite heroes to team up together. What we've seen already has very much impressed and sometimes surprised us. A good example of this is like a player made a Teemo deck that put so many mushrooms into the enemy's deck that it actually like crashed our servers. We fixed it because we can't allow that, obviously. But like that's a really good example of, we had in our mind like, what's the most mushrooms ever? And then players were like, yeah, that's not even close.
What advice do you have for budding game designers?
So I think there's kind of maybe a misconception that like game design is like a really high barrier to enter, field. I think there's some truth to it insofar as like it can be hard to get your foot in the door at like an established video game company. But game design is not rocket science. While the sort of formal academic field maybe is still developing, anybody can be a game designer. Like I play a lot of board games, and in many ways, like changing board game rules and making house rules like is the starting point of how you become a game designer, right? Like it's not the barrier that you think it is. Like you could take a game you like, even like Settlers of Catan, and imagine how would I improve this game? And when you answer the question and play test it with your family, like congrats, you're a game designer. And obviously the scale and scope of the questions that you try to solve when you're a game designer at a company like Riot is bigger and different. But the core loop is actually very much the same, right? Where you see an opportunity to make something better, you experiment and try it, and you play a test it and you get feedback, and then you ask like, was it better? And how can I make it better from there?
What would you like to tell fans of League of Legends and Legends of Runeterra in Southeast Asia?
I'm really excited to be able to finally show off the game that myself and hundreds of people at Riot have been working on for the last several years. We've poured our hearts and sweat into the game. We're really excited to get your feedback, and we think it's almost ready to launch later this year. It'll be super timely, and we can't wait.